What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction. In this, we have the SAS unit who went rogue to rescue their mates. I'm already loving it. Before we jump in, if you guys happen to enjoy, don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. Let's get right to it.
The British SAS, or Special Air Service, is one of the world's most elite special forces units, known for their bravery, skill, and precision. But what happens when orders go against their moral code? On September 19, 2005, in Basra, Iraq, two British SAS operators were in Iraq on a top-secret mission. The operators were identified only as Alpha 1 and Alpha 2.
Okay.
The country had been in turmoil since the US-led invasion in 2003, and the British military had been tasked with maintaining order in the southern city of Basra. Basra was originally proclaimed a beacon for post-war Iraq, a model of how to hand over control to the local population. But now it was a hotbed of insurgency.
Oh my days.
I want to get out of here. No interested.
The SAS had spent weeks observing and infiltrating the Iraqi insurgent groups, which were gradually taking control of the police force that British soldiers were supposed to be working with to restore order. As Alpha 1 and Alpha 2 were finished.
So yeah, this zone in Iraq is just awful at this point, right? The insurgents, it seems like, are becoming more and more powerful. Things are getting more and more chaotic. I'm intrigued to see what happened with these British soldiers.
Their surveillance mission, they were compromised by plainclothes Iraqi policemen.
Dang.
A scuffle ensued, and the SAS operators fired their weapons, wounding an Iraqi policeman. The SAS operators tried to escape, relying on their native garb for protection. But as they were leaving the area, they came upon an Iraqi police checkpoint and decided to try to talk their way out of an increasingly bad situation, but to no avail. They were captured and beaten by corrupt police officers sympathetic to hostile militia groups. The SAS operators stationed in Basra were in shock when they saw their fellow operators being paraded on Iraqi TV, charged with heinous crimes, and feared for their safety, especially given the brutalities of the factions fighting against the British forces.
I get it.
The likelihood of those operators surviving more than a few days was narrow at best. The SAS commander in charge of the unit realized that they needed to be rescued immediately, but his unit was too small, so he requested reinforcements from an SAS detachment 300 miles away. The operators equipped themselves with their gear and readied their submachine guns and C8 carbines before making their way towards a C-130 that was waiting for them. They eagerly prepared to move into action. However, when the SAS team requested permission from the superiors to launch the rescue mission, they were denied.
Dang.
The chain of command feared that any rescue attempt would lead to further casualties in a larger conflict with the insurgents.
Like, that's such a hard call to make at that level, because I think they really do care for the each and every single soldier, but in their position, they're required to look at the bigger picture. And when you're looking at the bigger picture, I think that kind of takes away from looking at each person who serves. I guess as a loved one, in a sense, you don't think about the loved ones they had back home. You don't think about, you got to do it in a way that best supports the country. And so they like, if we try to rescue them, things could get worse more. You also got to look out for the other soldiers. More soldiers could be caught or captured, and it could turn into a lot worse of a situation. So like, we just gotta. They got to figure it out. That's tough. But as a freaking soldier who's running along this person, who's trained along this person, you built up this relationship and bond. You're not about to let your buddy sit over there. You're not about to let your buddy just be captured and be like, they can figure it out. No, you got to go against orders. You got to go against orders, but you're going to save them.
The officials in London were caught off guard, and their response was sluggish. The political climate in newly freed Iraq was unstable. Despite the commander's disbelief at the command, he warned his superior about the perilous situation of leaving the two men in captivity. However, his plea fell on deaf ears as the general repeatedly overruled him. The commander realized that high command didn't care about the lives of his operators. He was furious, but he also knew that leaving his two people to the wolves was not an option. During that pivotal moment, the commander and his unit were confronted with a critical decision. The commander made the bold choice to disregard the orders. The SAS unit got on that C-130, decided to rescue their mates anyway.
Yeah, they did.
Minutes later, the C-130 took off. There was no going back. Once they reached the police station, they were aided by local officials and regular British Army officers. They tried to win the captives' release and resolve the situation peacefully, but every effort to gain permission to get through the gates was ignored.
Dang.
The mob grew around.
See, they try to do things peacefully. Just hand us our guys. We're going to be cool. We're going to leave y'all alone. We'll be on our way. We just want our guys, but the Iraqi soldiers didn't want to handle things peacefully. They wanted things to go another way. SAS, that's what you want. This can go another way.
Them, forcing them to leave. The armored vehicles were attacked with rocks and Molotov cocktails, and one had to be abandoned by its crew.
Dang.
The situation was getting worse by the hour. The SAS launched another rescue attempt with helicopter and mechanized infantry support. But this time they weren't so cordial. They slammed right through the walls of the police station with the help of the armored vehicles. The soldiers rushed out of the vehicles and swarmed the compound. The ear-splitting snap of flashbang grenades sounded in the air. Gunshots rang out as militants who raised their guns quickly fell. Upon entering the station, the SAS encountered a few frightened policemen who surrendered by raising their hands and then were disarmed and handcuffed. Initially, the rescue team was unable to locate the captive SAS operators and were concerned that they had been relocated once more. However, during another search of the compound, the task force discovered the two SAS operatives handcuffed inside a bathroom.
Oh, wow.
Although they were bruised and unkempt, they were still alive. The SAS checked them and swiftly moved them out of the compound and into a waiting armored vehicle. The rest of the SAS unit quickly followed, and the armored column turned and sped away from the location and successfully made their way back to base.
Shout out to the freaking SAS, yo. Came in fast. Enemy didn't even see it coming. By the time they seen it coming, they ain't know what to do but raise your hands and surrender. They got their guys. They tried to do it the nice way. Tried to do it the easy way. But Iraqi soldiers didn't have to agree, so I had to show them, like, if we really wanted to, this is what we could do. But we gonna take our guys and get up out of here.
Alpha 1 and Alpha 2 were transported to a hospital for medical attention. Amidst the chaos, however, there were consequences. About 100 prisoners managed to escape, and the Iraqis demanded reparations for the destruction caused. News of the successful rescue raced up the chain of command, through the Ministry of Defense and eventually into the Prime Minister's office. As news of the incident reached the public, the authorities in charge became aware of their embarrassing situation. The thought of punishing the operators, who had just been praised as heroes for rescuing their fellow British troops in Iraq, was too bitter to even consider.
Yeah, can't do that.
As a result, the higher-ups opted to authorize the rescue operation, even though they were aware that the mission had already been accomplished. This allowed them to save face and avoid punishing the rescuers, which would have been a bitter pill to swallow given their heroic efforts. Moreover, the government discovered that if they had attempted to impede the mission, the SAS leadership was ready to resign en masse.
Oh, wow.
The British government paid millions of pounds in compensation to the Iraqi government, which included rebuilding the damaged police station. The incident sparked a political debate in the UK about the country's involvement in Iraq. Many people criticized the government's decision to join the war, and the Basra rescue operation was seen as an example of the dangers and consequences of such actions.
I got you.
The SAS unit took a daring risk on that fateful day, staging a mutiny in order to rescue their mates. However, despite the risk, the decision was a calculated one that ultimately proved successful.
Yeah.
And the SAS once again lived up to their motto of who dares wins.
Come on now.
But let us know what you think in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, when the SAS went in there, they wasn't going in there to play games. They wasn't going in there to be friendly. They was going in there to handle business. That's all we got for this one. If you guys enjoyed, please don't forget to subscribe, get a video a thumbs up, check out the next, and I'll see y'all next.